feel like them going to 12 games, if you're upset about having the same teams in every year, I don't know why you think having an expanded field is going to somehow stop Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney from having dominant programs, because I don't see that necessarily happening.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. It's like if you're a Bama or a Clemson fan, you're like, oh, good, now I'm guaranteed to be in the playoffs every single year,
and a bye week.
No matter what happens,
right? And so the fear of that is, and I think this is the scary part, I think, for college football and like fans of, like that are rooted in like the tradition of the game. And I don't know if it's a valid concern or not, because like the schedule for me is the biggest question, right? Like, what does this do for the regular season schedule? Does it keep it the same? Do we have 12 games and then a championship game? And then
I think you're going to get much better regular season matchups, because think about if you're Bama and you're like, okay, what is the point of me scheduling? And then now Bama actually schedules pretty well, but let's just say, they could schedule Furman to get an easy win, because they know that you can't really lose in the current setup. I mean, you can, but you're playing with fire.
Right.
In this, hell, why not, instead of Furman, let's get, whoever. If it's Bama, let's get Texas home and home.
And you've seen that the past couple of years.
Right. And so part of some of these crazy things, like Florida State, for example, their future out of conference is LSU, Bama, then Georgia. That's ridiculous.
Yes, that was dumb.
Clearly, somebody knew this was coming, though.
So we actually talked about this last year about why, because Kirby went on this kick, right, and started scheduling. I think I said it last episode where you kind of have to give, or I said it on a different podcast. Sorry, you weren't. That like
bro.
Kirby
that cuts deep.
I'm sorry, man. You don't even call me the host, so it's kind of your fault. But like Kirby was kind of ahead of this, and I jokingly said that I thought Nick Saban has been the cause of all this, and I'm not trying to say it as like a homer. I'm saying it like in kind of truth, that he's kind of ruined college football, because people are tired of seeing the same thing. People want to see more parity. At the same time, he started scheduling those big, like week 0 matchups, right, against Virginia Tech and Clemson and Florida State, and all these, and it'd be a neutral site game, and you have all these recruits and blah, blah, blah. And then you see this shift where people start doing the home and home. And Kirby, like, he went on a spree, like it was like a 2 or 3 week spree where they scheduled everybody. Yeah. And it seemed to me, like, I think I said at the time, I think he knows that they're going to expand the playoff, because otherwise you're trying to protect your schedule. If not, right, if you're going to keep it to 4 teams, there's no reason to get that, overzealous about it. So I think you're right. I think they did know it was coming, but still, when you talk about like the whole season, you're saying the games are going to matter, right? My concern would be, because they also listed, and I think the exact quote was, the erosion of importance of big bowl games. And they specifically noted Florida having 3 players out in the Cotton Bowl last year, and Oklahoma beating them by what, like 35?
Yeah, 52-20.
It was awful.
Not that I know exactly.
So it was 42 points, really? That's 32. God, I'm bad at math. So anyway, they beat them by 82 points. So they listed that game specifically and said, like, we don't want to see big premier games that used to be like, back in like when we were growing up. I hate to sound old, but like the 90s, you go to a Sugar Bowl, you go to the Cotton Bowl, you go to one of the big 6 bowls. That's a big thing, right? So now we don't really have that as much, because people are opting out if it's not in the playoff or it's not in the national championship. Do we think that's going to stop? Like, I feel like that could possibly happen at the end of the regular season. Like, imagine Iron Bowl or Florida State.
Yeah, but they won't opt out for the season, though. They may rest players in like a Florida State game, which I don't like. But at the same time, let's say your 3 best players are out for both teams because you're both in it. It's supposed to be a top 10 matchup, something crazy like that. Not that would happen in Florida State right now, but
you think that those intense college rivalries are going to get together beforehand and be like, hey, we're going to put our best 3 players out if you do. Okay.
No, but I think if that's what teams are doing, then there's still going to be good players that are in their place. There's still going to be juice to the game. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks that there's better players out, but I think, like, so take, for example, how it ended this year. And let's say the top 12, it was Florida and Oklahoma as a playoff game, because these games are going to be hosted on campus, right?
Right.
Those opening games. So can you imagine Oklahoma versus Florida at Florida, you
Oh,
don't
it'd be
think
sick.
that like Pitts and those guys will be playing in that game?
Oh no, they definitely will. What I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
is like, I just worry that we'll just see a shift into those players, like not opting out, but sitting out to rest players like we see in the NFL just a couple weeks earlier. So I don't want to watch an
Yeah.
Iron Bowl without like Mac Jones playing, or well, I wish
Right.
in the 2019 game maybe, but
Yeah.
but like, you know, and then the next part of this is I think that that's going to lead to a shift in schedule changes where you're going to start moving rivalry games up earlier in the year, and then you're going to have like the schedule on the back end maybe not as difficult. The way you just mentioned it, look, the way it'll be set up is the first 4 teams will have a bye. Teams 5 through 8 will host teams 9 through 12 at their home stadium. The only thing
That
I can
is
see wrong with
awesome.
this, I think that is incredible, right? And they're
Yeah.
still going to use, like, I think once they get into like the next round with the first 4 teams that are in the bye, I think they're going to use like the traditional New Year's Six bowls, because I don't see them not being able to do that, and I hope they don't. But like, imagine like a semifinal game in December, and it's like you said, Florida, Oklahoma, Florida going to Wisconsin, or like, you know what I mean, like in a snowstorm. And so I think there's some cool aspects to it from that standpoint. The other thing about it is that kind of frustrates me is that I think part of this is just our inability to like have nice things and just to be happy. I always like joke around that we're a nation of haters, right? Like we can't just be happy with anything. So we had, when we were growing up, you just had these like write-in voters. You had the AP national champion, like the coaches poll, and it was from writers all across the country. They would vote on it. And then we started thinking that, you know, that has like a bunch of inherent biases. So we don't want to split national champions because Nebraska, Michigan, 97. So we're going to go to the BCS. We're going to take people out of it and like altogether. We're going to put computers in here. So then we're going to have them come up with a system and a formula, whatever. Top 2 teams will play every year. And we couldn't have been happier. And then Bama LSU happens in 2011. And they brought this up, was that in 2011, that game was miserable for every fan outside of Tuscaloosa and maybe Baton Rouge. Like, nobody wanted to watch it, them replay each other. And they also didn't want to watch a 9-6 game, or what do you call it? Like a repeat of the 9-6 game where there's no touchdowns, nothing exciting. I totally understand that. Like Florida and Florida State replayed each other like for a national championship.
Yeah.
There's a lot of points scored in those games, right? There's offense and people are excited. I totally understand how that's not fun for the rest of the country to watch. On the other hand, you know, if we're making a move to make this more for the fans, this isn't fucking pro wrestling, right? Like, those were the 2 best teams in the country in 2011. LSU beat 8 ranked teams by an average of 24.8 points per game. Alabama had the best defense in the history of college football statistically and gave up 178 total yards a game, right? Like 8.6 points per game. So those are the 2 best teams. I think it would be better to be inclusive for more fan bases, sure. But to like make a move into, we have to make this more enjoyable for the viewer and the fan so our ratings can go up. That's a disservice to every kid that is working at 2-a-days and these programs and practices every single day. And like, they're not playing to, no offense, guys, but like, they're not playing to put a fucking smile on the fans' face. They're playing to win games.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, that's the weird setup about college sports in general is that you've got these guys that all the money goes to not the players. So these guys are making decisions solely based on the money. They don't give a shit anything about the players. And the players are the ones performing. They're not getting paid. So it's just a weird setup. But yeah, I mean, of course, this is whatever generates the most money, they're going to go for.
They said a 12-team playoff, they estimated it would be 2 to 3 times more. It would be worth 2 to 3 times more in value of what it's already worth right now. And ESPN is currently paying $7.2 billion for the rights to the playoff.
Yeah.
$7.2 billion. And they said it's going to be worth 2 to 3 times that. So I don't know. I just think I thought the best solution would have been 6. And before I got on that whole 2011 tangent, what I meant to say, the actual point was that like we couldn't have voters do it and writers vote on it. We had to have computers to have 2 teams. Then 2 teams wasn't good enough because we didn't like that game and that outcome. So then we wanted to have a 4-team playoff. As soon as we got the 4-team playoff, people are upset that like that's not enough teams. And specifically in 2017, when the Bama Ohio State thing, they got in without winning their division. So I get it, and I get the frustration of having the same players and people or same teams in every year. At the same time, like I just feel like as soon as we get to 12, like we're gonna want 16, then we're gonna want 24.
Yeah,
and I just don't see when it stops.
Yeah, a couple negatives or a negative. I do think, despite having maybe one or two better big games on your schedule versus like a FCS squad or something like that,
right?
I am a little worried about. There's something to be said, and this is probably better for my personal health. Like when you wake up on a Saturday, you know that you have to win, and it makes that's what makes college football so great. Like every Saturday, you really got to exactly. To have that go away, those nerves before that game, that's what I love about college football. I mean, to me, when Florida State's really going, before a big game, man, you get the chills, man, because you got to win it. And I think that will be totally taken away from college football if you expand this too far.
I don't know about totally, but I think you're right in terms of, if you expand it too far, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
So I would say
keep a 12-game schedule with this.
Right. So if you're making this decision, you're hoping this is a decision for the long term. Like this isn't going to be another 5-year experiment and then we're going to move on again. Personally, as a team that, as a fan of a team that sucks right now and has the ability to get back to being a winning team, you love that it expands because, we were talking about this earlier today. If you're not one of those top 4 teams right now, it's, okay, so I get to watch my team go play Oregon in the Holiday Bowl. Cool. Like, half the team isn't playing. Like,
yeah.
So I
do like that aspect of it. Where the bowls would matter again.
Yeah, and more bowls would matter, and you're that much closer to actually mattering if you got to get to the top 12, not a top 4.
Right.
So teams like a Florida State, or if you're like a Michigan fan, or any blue blood that's not doing well right now, I think you would want this.
Yeah,
it gets you in the conversation faster.
Agreed. And the last thing I'll say on it too is like I completely agree with what you're saying from that standpoint. I think what people want to see is like they want to see like March Madness recreated in football, like and I get the whole point of like if high schools can do it every year, and the FCS can do it every year. There's a way for the
you mean with upsets? You mean? Like
like
Cinderella stories.
Exactly. And they will at least want to see people get like given a chance. And I get that part of it. Again, like Cincinnati, I don't want to bring up like the UCF stuff. If it's a financial thing primarily, UCF is their fan base traveled for the Fiesta Bowl out in fucking Arizona against LSU, right? Like I feel like they belong in terms of like those teams. I think belong at least in the conversation of being added, and we'll finally see that. However, it's only going to limit it to one school. They're not going to get a second at large team.